Thank you, Asil.
You're welcome.
Hello, and welcome to our session today about maritime education. And welcome to our panelists from the Massachusetts Maritime Academy, Michael Ortiz, Ashley Willis, Patrick Nobrega, and Joshua Teft. But before we get started, I'll give a brief introduction to who we are and then turn it over to the panelists. So I'm Paula Masad, one of the Education USA advisors. Asil?
Hello, everyone. I'm Asil Ogheli. I'm also a member of the Education USA in Qatar. Thank you so much for joining us. And we would like to remind everyone who is joining us on Zoom and everyone who's watching us on Facebook, please feel free to share your questions and we will do our best to address these. Thank you.
Thank you, Asil. So Education USA is a U.S. State Department network of over 425 international advising centers in 178 countries. And so what do? We offer free and unbiased advising for students who are interested in studying in the United States. So here in Doha, if you're interested in some guidance around studying in the United States, we invite you to book a virtual advising appointment, and you can do that through our Facebook page, and we'll share the information also at the end of the presentation. We also partner with schools and are available to present to groups of students who are interested in U.S. higher education. And if you're a school or a counselor and you'd like to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. Now I'll turn it over to our panelists. Joshua?
Thank you, Paula and Asil. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the presentation today about studying maritime education in the United States and specifically Massachusetts Maritime Academy. My name is Commander Josh Teft. I am the Director of Admissions here at the Academy, and we're so thrilled to have you here. At this time, I'm going to ask the panelists, my esteemed colleagues, to go ahead and introduce themselves so that you can get to know who you'll be hearing from this evening. Mike, can we start with you?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Ortiz, and I serve as the Director of the Office of Intercultural Engagement here at the Academy. And Patrick?
Hi, everyone. Good morning and good evening to you as well. My name is Patrick Nobrega. I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Intercultural Engagement, working alongside Mike. In our office, we do international student services and diversity and inclusion initiatives, which we'll talk about later on. Nice to meet you all.
Ashley?
And we'll go to Ashley next. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Willis, and I'm the Associate Director of Freshman Admissions at the Academy. So I work in the same department as Josh.
Excellent, thank you. So I wanted to briefly go through what today's agenda will entail. We're going to talk a little bit about what a Maritime Academy is. So giving you some background and idea of what it means to study at a Maritime Academy, specifically here in the United States. And then talk a little bit about the Massachusetts Maritime Academy. Our specific programs, some high-level highlights about what the Academy has to offer, as well as a brief introduction to Buzzards Bay, Massachusetts, where we're located. We'll then jump into the application process, as well as understanding a little bit more about the I-20 issuance and visa process, and wrap up everything with some Q&A. So at this time, I'd like to kick it back over to my colleague, Mike, who's going to talk to you a little bit about studying at the Maritime Academies here in the United States.
All right, thank you very much, Josh. So one of the things that we want to talk about is trying to understand what qualifies as a Maritime Academy. This is a very unique opportunity for individuals that are seeking to maybe find careers on the ocean or even landside as well. One of the things that qualifies for a Maritime Academy is those type of majors pertaining into marine engineering and marine transportation. Marine engineering is looking at, say, for instance, a very large vessel, but also looking at the power generation. You know, think about it as like a floating city, understanding what it takes in those type of components to run that city. So that's where the marine engineering goes through. The second part of it is the marine transportation, and that is actually navigating the actual vessel through the waters. So these are very complex type majors, but they're also very rewarding. The things is with these two majors is that when you're talking about a vessel that as large as that it is, it really takes a lot of skill set, but it also takes a lot of ability to understand different things of how to make sure it operates and it works and working with a team. One of the things that they do for marine engineering is that you can obtain a license, and most countries have these type of licenses. For marine engineering, you can, when you graduate from a maritime institution, you will have a third mate unlimited power generation. That's within that vessel. That gives you that opportunity to work on any size vessel. The second part of that is for marine transportation, which you get your third mate unlimited tonnage for you to navigate those vessels. So those are the type of things that look for more of the maritime industries. obviously during over time, we've always expanded to additional majors, and then we're going to talk about some of those kind of experiences. So in addition to that, sometimes what they'll also include is a business aspect, because they're really talking about, say, for instance, logistics, port management, and that kind of goes in that direction. Those are the two main components of maritime academies, but we just want to kind of highlight those as a general. Josh, if you can go to the next slide, that would be great. So what are maritime academies? So in the United States, we have 6 maritime academies. Massachusetts, which is where we're from. We have Maine, New York, Great Lakes is over just but touching by Canada, over the Great Lakes, Texas, and California. Those are all considered state institutions. Those are all public. Then there's one last one, which is the Federal Academy, which is the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy. All of these follow under the Maritime Administration, because that's what allows for individuals to sit for those type of licenses for them. So we just wanted to make sure that you understand there's not just Mass Maritime, there's an additional institutions in the United States that students will be eligible for. And if you're interested, obviously, as an international student, you can absolutely apply to these institutions. And we have great working relationships and even just overall questions, because it's a great opportunity to look into. We can go to the next slide, that would be great. So when we look at federal and state, so again, this goes right back to the state institutions. This is a state institution. It's usually run by the state that we are abide by in the United States itself. There's usually no military obligation and there's no nomination requirement, unlike the Federal Academy, where you will have to have a nomination and then you will have to commitments over time. One of the nice things is that any of the institutions do take international students, but at the same time, we want to make sure that you understand that process, that there is no commitment to the military. But as you progress and you understand what we have is that we do offer that type of military type structure. And the reason for that is looking at the chain of command and how the merchant marine professionals and careers will look at that. So you say, for instance, you have the very kind of the captain, the leading individual that will be in charge of that vessel. And there's that change of command that all the way goes through. So we want to make sure that we understand the difference between the federal and the state, but those are the two big components that we have. Next slide. So this is going to be very important for as international students to understand, is that students can become merchant mariners within any country that they have or they decide to work for. One of the things that is a little bit of a challenge, but at the same time, we still give an opportunity to international students, is that when you look to become a merchant mariner and say, for instance, study at any of the state or federal institutions, unfortunately, you will not be able to get the exact license that is actually run through the United States Coast Guard pertaining to the Jones Act of 1920. That's not to say that you can't have that, but what's important is that even with the actual license itself, is that we will actually work with the additional the additional countries that are. I've actually reached out into the home country just to make sure that we understand that process. Say, for instance, for Qatar is definitely the Ministry for Transport and Communication. We will work with you through that process and get the appropriate documentations. We go through that. And that's one of the services that we have through my office and that we handle with Patrick and I handle. But we want to make sure that you understand that. So you can still absolutely pursue these type of careers because we do it on a regular basis for international students alone. Thank you, Josh. Yep. So I guess the question is, do you have to work at sea? That's not necessarily what you have to do. Some people want to choose to go all into that type of profession, into that type of field. They want to go out to sea. That's perfectly fine. But to understand for a ship to operate and, understanding goods and how those are transported and things like that, what's really cool is that there's also that port side, there's that land side, and that's where a lot of the other maritime institutions have branched out to some, looking at operations, port security, environmental, business, logistics. So there's additional things that go through it, but something to keep in mind, there's a lot of math, a lot of science, a lot of opportunities for a student to actually look at those type of things, but it can be rewarding at the same time. And that's probably one of the biggest things. And if you're looking for something different, this would be it. This is something different that you may see than a traditional institution, but it's at the same time, like I keep on saying, that it is valuable and it is important, but it's also can give back to the home country as well. And that's going to be such an important aspect. So again, the same thing, there's looking at the jobs. 90% of the goods are actually shipped around. This is actually a picture, I believe, of the canal, the Panama Canal. One thing to keep in mind is that we're a long way from autonomous ships. This when I say autonomous, it's kind of a self-driving car and a self-driving ship. We're a little far away from that right now. Not to say that it's not working, but that's a whole nother aspect of engineering we're looking to go through. But we still need the physical person to actually navigate the vessel and actually work on the engineering. It's a lot of technology, a lot of hands-on. But if this is something that you may be really interested in, I highly recommend for you to even do a little bit more research to really understand what this looks at. Because again, this may be the first time you've ever seen something like this, but you know what? Again, it's rewarding. And that's probably the most benefit that I could always stress the most.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. And for that high level review of what it means to study at a maritime academy. I think it is important to make that distinction that, just because you are studying at a maritime academy, it doesn't necessarily require you to work out to sea. And so as we get the opportunity to hear from Ashley next about the academy itself, we're going to be able to provide you some details on some of those other career opportunities and trajectories that come along. So at this time, I'll turn things over to my colleague, Ashley, to talk to you about specifically Massachusetts Maritime Academy.
Great. So hello again, everyone. So yeah, we just want to dive into sort of what all of that information that Mike just covered looks like specifically at Massachusetts Maritime Academy. So some sort of brief facts about us. We have about 1,700 undergraduate students, so we are a relatively small school. We do have an additional 100 graduate students, although the program is taught not directly on our main campus. So on the main campus, it's really that 1,700. As was described as, all the state maritime academies, we are a public university of Massachusetts, as well as a state maritime academy, which essentially gives us a sort of special mission designation in terms of those specialized academics that we offer. But overall, we offer a STEM-based education within a regimented campus lifestyle, which we will certainly talk a little bit more about. But we do have a variety of traditional campus activities, such as athletics, student government, clubs and organizations, and we will talk a little bit more about that as well. So Buzzards Bay, this is where we're located, and I just want to sort of put in reference where that really is. It's actually often not somewhere even people in Massachusetts know where Buzzards Bay is, so we can certainly break that down. Essentially, we are located right along the Cape Cod Canal in Massachusetts, which is basically the beginning of that long arm sticking off of the state. That puts us about an hour directly south of Boston, or about 45 minutes from Providence, Rhode Island. So we are between two larger cities that are easier to fly in and out of. So while you can't really fly directly to Buzzards Bay, we do have those connection points from travel purposes, but also in terms of having things to do in the area. You do have those cities close by. More where we are directly, we're in a sort of suburban area that also shifts based off the time of year. It's a common vacation destination. So in the warmer months, there tends to be more people around, and then it's quieter at this time of year in the winter. But there is a lot to do outdoors, beaches to explore. So definitely a great place to be if you like spending time outside, especially along the water. So academically, we offer 7 undergraduate programs total. They are all Bachelor of Science degrees. They're all listed right here, and we'll talk a little bit more about what each one of these are. But what does tie all of our academic programs together is a focus in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. And so that really means that all of these majors have a very strong science and math curriculum, even in something like business or emergency management, which are not typically thought of as much as STEM careers. That science and math curriculum continues to be a big part of those majors. What also ties all of these together is what we call a learn, do, learn philosophy. And really what that means is that there's a big focus on hands-on and experiential learning combined with, building traditional theory from a textbook. So, everyone's spending time in the classroom, building that base of knowledge, then going out and applying it in a hands-on way, then coming back to the classroom to review and learn from that hands-on experience, and repeating that cycle throughout the course of your program. All of our students complete experiential learning programs or trips within their major. We have a ton of great labs and hands-on spaces available on campus, as well as our students complete co-ops and internships. So there's also different levels of hands-on experiences that you're doing in any one of these majors. And now we're going to talk about, a little bit what each one of these programs actually looks like. Mike already gave you an overview of sort of what marine engineering and marine transportation is. These are two of our sort of our cornerstone programs. These are the ones that we were founded on and then sort of built out from. These are the two programs where students are most likely to work out on ships, but those are not the only career paths available within the program. I would say initially, working on a ship is typically the first step students are taking. But in transportation, in that navigation side, there's also opportunity to work in logistics from land later on. In engineering, students are building a lot of skills that are applicable in a variety of areas of engineering. So you're not destined to only ever be a ship's engineer. You certainly have transferable skills to other areas of engineering or naval architecture as well. The hands-on work students are doing in these programs is an annual sea term, which is where students go out for 6 weeks on our training ship, the TS Kennedy, which is the one featured in my virtual background. And they also do a commercial shipping experience, which is an internship that you do aboard another vessel somewhere in the world. Next, we have facilities and energy systems engineering. These are the two other types of engineering that we offer. Facilities engineering is basically overseeing the design and maintenance of systems that make up a large facility. So you have your plumbing, your HVAC, your electrical, rather than maintaining those individual systems, you're overseeing how those systems interwork within a large building or other type of facility. Energy systems is the design and implementation of systems that distribute electrical power. So rather than engineering necessarily the actual electricity, this is about the mass distribution of that electricity. Both of these programs have a large focus on energy management, management of large plants or systems. Both have a focus on sustainable energy needs, so ensuring that energy is used efficiently and focusing on new sustainable forms of energy. And both of these programs are not going to be from a typical list of engineering programs that you might see, but they do employ many skills that you see in other engineering programs. So facilities really build on mechanical and industrial engineering elements. Energy systems really pulls in electrical and environmental engineering components. So they are related to those more traditional forms of engineering you may see. Next, we have emergency management. This is our largest non-licensing program. Essentially, emergency management focuses on disaster planning, preparedness, and response. So if there's a large natural disaster or a large man-made disaster, these are the folks who have created the plan for what's going to happen in that situation, as well as typically the people who are actually responding in that situation and providing those immediate needs in response. We do have a new emergency management simulator on campus, which is an emergency operations room, which gives students an opportunity to experience what a physical space would look like in an incident command response. Next, we have international maritime business. This is essentially the business side of the shipping industry. So like we mentioned earlier, 90% of goods travel by ship at some point in their transportation, which means that this business is a huge part of the world economy. And while you have the people out on the ships, making sure that it's functionally getting from point A to point B, there's also a need for a whole team of people on land ensuring that that can logistically happen. So whether that's port logistics, marina management, cargo insurance, space capacity planning on the ship before it leaves, those are all essential things that contribute to that, contribute to the industry. So you're still building general business skills, but you have this unique focus in the maritime field. And lastly, we have marine science, safety, and environmental protection, which is essentially a combination of marine biology and environmental science. It provides a very practical approach to marine science. Our students do a lot of hands-on work on campus through our aquaculture lab or field work in the area near our campus. Students can work in environmental protection, environmental management, working more on the research side or maybe on the advocacy side. There's a lot of different ways to apply this particular degree, whether you're focused on the research or more on protection or prevention. So aside from the academic component, the other sort of big thing to understand about us and some of the other state maritime academies is that you'll be part of what we call the Regiment of Cadets. This is essentially a military style structure that exists on campus, but does not bear a military service requirement. So you're not actually a part of the military when you come to Mass Maritime, but you are participating in the structure that exists on campus, meaning students wear uniforms, the day-to-day life is relatively structured, but that's essentially your campus life, not your entire life, if that makes sense. The purpose of the regiment is really to build character and leadership skills. We refer to it as our leadership lab on campus, and is meant to enhance your academic program. So it's taking your day-to-day campus life and making that a piece of your academic experience to build skills that will be beneficial to you in any career path. But outside of the regiment, there are other things to do on campus. We do have 15 Division III varsity athletic teams, as well as a number of club and intramural sports, which essentially just means that the level of competition may be a little bit lesser than the varsity team. So, you know, if you're interested in competing at a higher level, or if you just want to play soccer or something for fun, you can do it at multiple levels. We do have a great student government association as well, which oversees about 30 clubs and organizations on campus, which may range from an academic focus like future engineers or something like beekeeping. So there are ways to get involved outside of that structure in terms of, you know, those traditional campus clubs. We have different events that happen on campus throughout the year, pop-up events with food trucks on campus. Emery Rice Day is like a field day, you know, with inflatables that we bring to campus. There's a student lounge in the residence halls. So there are opportunities to relax and have fun in combination with that structured environment. So outcomes. So why are people coming to Mass Maritime or coming to a maritime academy in general? Our first year retention rate is about 90%, which means that about 90% of students who come for the first year return for their second year. So while that initial transition to Mass Maritime can certainly be challenging, most students, once they make the transition, tend to stay. Our average career placement is about 85% within 3 to 6 months of graduation. So about 85% of students are by that time placed in either a career or graduate education. We do have many students who find careers within global organizations. The maritime industry is certainly a global one, so there are opportunities beyond just the US. And our 6-year graduation rate is about 85%, which is the highest of all the Massachusetts public universities. So in terms of the application process, if you are applying directly from high school, you're able to apply typically in the fall of your senior year of high school. So essentially 1 year prior to when you would be attending. That's a general time frame. You can apply via the common application, which you may be using to apply to other universities in the US. We also have an online application directly through our website, so you're welcome to use that as well. There's no preference to us in terms of which one you use. Along with the application form, you would need to submit an evaluated and translated copy of your high school and or college transcript. So if you were a transfer student, you would also have the college transcript to submit, but otherwise your high school transcript. A personal essay, 2 letters of recommendation from any non-family source. So that could be someone who knows you academically, someone who's an employer, someone who's a coach, really anyone who can kind of speak to your character or abilities. The SAT and ACTs are currently optional for students who are applying for this current year. We are hoping to extend that optional policy, although that is not yet confirmed. So if you're applying in a future term, you may still need to submit the SATs or ACTs, although in reviewing the applications, we are definitely focusing on that GPA, so those high school grades. We also require that you submit the TOEFL or IELTS to demonstrate English proficiency. If you attend a high school that is taught in English, that requirement can be waived. And then a copy of your passport. So that's your current passport. The early action deadline is November 15th in the year that you're applying. Priority deadline of February 15th, which is priority for merit scholarship review, which I will talk more about in just a minute. And then a final deadline for applying for any fall semester is March 15th. So the March prior to the fall that you would be starting. Go ahead to the next one. So costs and scholarships. So tuition fees, room and board and everything, including your CBAG, which is all the uniforms that you'll wear over the 4 years for international students, is about $42,000 per year. There are an additional few costs to consider if you're going on C-term or a first year experiential learning. Those hands-on trips that I mentioned that you do with your program can be an additional $5,000 per year depending on the program. So $47,000 is going to be a better estimate of sort of your yearly costs. We do have merit scholarships available. Those range from $8,000 to $15,000 for out-of-state and international students. You don't need to apply separately for a merit scholarship. When you submit your application and we review it, we'll automatically review you for merit scholarships. So an acceptance letter from us would indicate if you're receiving a scholarship and the amount that you're receiving.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ashley. Yeah, thank you so much. It was a great review, and hopefully that gives you a better sense of what we have to offer you here at the Maritime Academy. One thing that I think is important to really focus on is the hands-on learning experience coupled with the regiment. And as Ashley described it, that hands-on learning experience is what's getting you the experience you need to land your first job. It's the leadership training of the regiment that's going to get you your first promotion. And that's one of the big things that we've seen the success of our students is really coupling those two elements together. And so hopefully that gives you a better sense of what we have to offer you here at Massachusetts Maritime Academy. At this time, I'd like to turn things over to Mr. Patrick Nobrega, who's going to talk to you a little bit more about the Office of Intercultural Engagement, as well as the I-20 and F1 visa process.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. So hi again, everybody. My name is Patrick Nobrega, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Intercultural Engagement. It's great to be here with everybody today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the functional areas of our office if you were to come to Mass Maritime. And I also want to preface this with whether you come to Mass Maritime or not, definitely take advantage of the resources of the staff and the administration that you have at whatever school in the US that you go to. There's a whole group of people that work on the campus, from admissions to student services and even your faculty, that will really be looking for your success in your college experience or grad school experience. So a little bit about our functional areas. We focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion here on campus. Our goal is to make our campus as diverse and global as possible. We also support education abroad experiences, including the C-term experience and other study abroad experiences that Ashley spoke about. And then we finally, we also focus on international student services, which I think is especially important for this group. So that's not only advising on visas and your student status in the US, but also you as a person, right? So your adjustment to campus, we recognize that there's a pretty big change to come from abroad, somewhere like Qatar, Lebanon, Egypt, any of the places that may be on the call today in the MENA region, coming to that little town in Massachusetts that Ashley pointed out called Buzzards Bay. So that is what we are here to do, and that's what we're happy to help with. So on the next slide, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you may, what steps you may take to study in the US. So first and foremost, studying in the US does require a valid US status. For many people, that's probably a visa. And in the circumstance of someone coming to study higher education in the US, the most popular visa in the US is the F1 for full-time degree-seeking students. So the F1 visa is basically a non-immigrant visa that says that your intent is to come and study in the US. And that is, again, the most common visa that we have. Our office, the Office of Intercultural Engagement, actually holds the titles of Principal Designated School Official and Designated School Official to process F1 paperwork and advise on the F1 process rules and regulations. So that's just important to know as a resource. Again, whether you're coming to Massachusetts Maritime Academy or any institution of higher education in the US, if you're coming on the F1 visa, make sure you communicate with that PDSO or DSO. So those are the people that through the admissions process are going to coach you on getting your F1 visa, which involves a visit to the consulate that we'll talk about, or embassy, I should say, that we'll talk about in a moment. but also when you're here, we'll just make sure that you're keeping up with all the requirements of that F1 status to allow you to successfully study in the US. And so on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the requirements. So again, the F1 is a student visa that's designed for degree-seeking students in the US. So first and foremost, pretty basic, your intent would be to study in the US. Next, you would have to get acceptance at an accredited US institution. So whether that's Mass Maritime, hopefully, I think everyone in this call would love people to be interested in Mass Maritime, but any maritime academy in the US. So you have that intent to study, you will get accepted to the US institution, and then you will complete a successful F1 student visa application. So someone in my role, again, which is the principal designated school official, would coach you on getting your F1 student visa. That will typically entail an interview at the US consulate or embassy. Just to note that right now, in kind of the COVID era, we want to be aware that US consulates and embassies are kind of overloaded or may have some different wait times. So the earlier you can do your admissions application at any school you go to, the better it is for you, the PDSO, and the consulate or embassy for you to apply for the F1. Another requirement is that full-time student status. So as an undergraduate student, you would expect to be studying 12 or more credits per semester at whatever institution you go to, or for a graduate student, 9 or more credits to get that full-time requirement. And so before I move on to a little bit more of how our office will support you, this is kind of the F1 visa process that I just discussed in a nutshell. So again, in order to study in the US, you would need a valid US status. One of the most common is F1. So you start by getting granted admission to, there I put Mass Maritime or any US institution. You would complete an affidavit of financial support to confirm your funding for one academic year at an institution. So this can be someone paying for themselves, someone who's sponsored by family members, or even a government scholarship or other organization. Just a note here too, that you can actually combine multiple sources of funding to meet that requirement for one academic year at the institution. That's kind of a big ask for someone to put forward documentation to show one academic year I think for anybody. But again, just to note that you can combine several different types of funding to meet that total requirement. And that affidavit and that funding is going to be looked at by the US Embassy to make sure that you're able to support yourself in the US for that first year if you're on the F1. Next, you would receive that I-20 document from the institution. So that would most likely come from myself or Mr. Ortiz, who we heard from earlier today. And we'll talk about what that is in just a moment. Of course, there's a CBIS I-901 fee. So there is a fee that you pay for the management of your F1 visa profile in the system. And again, someone like me would be able to coach you on where and how to pay that. And then you complete the DS-160, which is an F1 visa application. And that will essentially allow you to schedule that appointment for an interview at the US consulate or embassy that's most likely going to be closest to your hometown or wherever you're currently living in order to apply for that F1 visa status. So that interview is basically going to be mostly a consular official, just kind of asking you your plans and making sure that you do qualify for the F1. Once you're done with that, you'll receive the F1 visa stamp, which is actually a physical stamp that is put in your passport. And that combined with the information on the I-20 will grant you eligibility to travel to the US and study at a US institution, whether it's Mass Maritime or any maritime academy. So what is the I-20? The I-20 is an interesting document that I just wanted to highlight. It actually reflects your program information and F1 status here in the US. So that's going to include your biographical information. It's going to include the length of study of your program. And it's a very important document. So make sure wherever you go in the US, if you're on the F1, keep that I-20 document with you while traveling and make sure to keep it safe as well. And also contact your PDSO or DSO if any document is lost or damaged or you have any questions about your I-20. And just to give you an example, I think the next bullet here, is a picture of the I-20 document. So essentially, you're granted this document by the PDSO or DSO at your respective institution. You use it to apply for the F1. and you'll be in business, and then you'll keep this document safe with you, and it has a lot of important information about your program. So to kind of close us off on what my office does, again, my name is Patrick, and I'm the principal designated school official at Mass Maritime, along with Mr. Ortiz. So we do all that visa stuff, kind of the nitty gritty and advising. But most importantly, we support our international students, and we provide international student services. So we like to say that we support cadets from around the world. We do advocacy and support while you're here, and that ranges from cultural adjustment to the visa stuff I just talked about. We also want to do intercultural programs to celebrate you and your culture and where you're coming from. We so look forward to a post-COVID era when these events don't have to be as virtual as they are. We're currently celebrating Black History Month in the US and at Mass Maritime. And, I think if we're able to pull these events off virtually, I cannot wait until we're back in person. And we always take ideas and feedback for different programs. Right here on the right, you'll see some of our favorite cadets recently that graduated. They are from Panama, and this is really cool. This is 4 Panamanian cadets, and they are on a ship in the Panama Canal. So they actually left Buzzards Bay, went to Panama and through the Panama Canal. So that was a great sense of pride for them. Just one example of a visual of our global community here at Mass Maritime. So I would be happy to take questions toward the end. I think we're going to move into a question and answer period. But again, thank you so much, and we look forward to supporting you and any questions you have if you're interested to come to Mass Maritime.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. And I think, as we've gone through this presentation, and obviously as someone who's familiar with a lot of the information that we've thrown at you today, it can be a little overwhelming. And so one of the things I think I want to stress from on behalf of all 4 of us, but the entire Academy community, is that we are here to help you. We are here to be a major part of this process. So as questions arise, as you are trying to navigate some of the challenges of the international student application, but also the current COVID world, certainly feel free to utilize the contact information you see here on your screen to reach out to any one of us that we can help you. That's ultimately what our biggest goal is. We hope we found this information valuable today, and we are looking forward to opening up the floor to any questions that you might have about studying here in the United States or the Massachusetts Maritime Academy specifically.
Hi, thank you all. And we do have a few questions, and I just want to say that was an amazing presentation. I learned a lot, and I think the one thing that just jumped out at me is often we hear students say they want to study engineering, but these really specific targeted areas of engineering that you offer, it just is fascinating to me. So anyhow, let me jump into the questions that we have here. We have, let's see, are there, one question is, are there any tracks which could be of interest for students who have interest in computer science?
Sure, excellent question. Not currently that we have anything specific with computer science. We do anticipate that there may be some shift eventually. One of the unique things that you might notice about all of our programs of study is that there is always that tie back to the maritime industry. So initially when the Academy was founded way back in the late 1800s, it was just for training those merchant mariners, so the marine transportation, marine engineering that Mike and Ashley both spoke of. But as time progressed, as things evolved, we started to add those additional majors. So things like the facilities engineering was because we saw a lot of our marine engineers stepping back onto land to work in the engineering fields. Marine science, safety, environmental protection, we were discovering what kind of environmental impact the maritime industry had on the world. Emergency management, mariners are considered to be the original emergency managers and being prepared for disaster and how to respond to it. And then most recently, our energy systems and international business programs, which came on board because of the logistics elements in business, but also the green energy pushes and energy systems. What I mean to give that long-winded answer for is to say that we have continued to evolve as an institution and as the maritime industry and corresponding sort of shoreside industries that support the maritime industry have evolved. So do we anticipate that may be something in the future? Certainly we see that as a possibility, but at this time, nothing on the books right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Then I have a question from our registration form, and the person says, I have a diploma in marine engineering with a Marine Third Engineer Officer International license. And this person is looking for an opportunity to continue his studies or her studies up to the PhD level. I don't know if you can speak to that. I know you talked about undergraduate and possibly some graduate programs, but would you offer a doctorate or any kind of, where would you direct somebody with this kind of question?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting one. And it sounds like that can go a lot of different, couple different avenues with something like that. If someone's really interested in a PhD, looking at those type of fields, see what works best for them and what career path that they want to go through. Someone with a third mate's license already and kind of what that direction is with a PhD or some type of doctorate degree. Think about maybe looking at maybe specializing in another type of engineering or specializing in other aspects. We don't necessarily offer any doctorate programs at the Academy, but I would advise a student to really focus on something with what they have a passion to do. You need to understand that a PhD is considered a terminal degree. So that is something that some people may want to go into, is teaching faculty, teaching classes or maybe teaching that experience that is there. I've seen a couple of the engineers will go into like administration policies or looking at law degrees or things like that because of the globalization between the market and also the industry. That would be our recommendation directly of what someone would be interested for something like that. But as for actual PhD in marine engineering or things like that, specialize a little bit more, maybe see what else how that translate into something else, because it's solely as a preference, but unfortunately we do not have that type of program.
Okay, so what about a master's degree? If you take it a step down?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so if we look at a master's degree, most of the times, like say for instance, we do have a master's degree in facilities like a management. Some will look into mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. Those are easily to translate into a lot of those type of programs. That is definitely something that they should be considering if that's what they want to do. At the Academy, we have emergency management, facilities management, and international maritime business. Those are the three that we offer, but the other maritimes do offer additional master's degrees. So I encourage them to look at those type of programs if they're interested as well.
Okay. Then we have a question. I know you touched on the English language proficiency requirement. Somebody's asking specifically, what is that requirement? And then if prospective students have super achievements in engineering related subjects, but not fluent in English, is there any support for students with English language learning?
Sure. So we don't have any ESL English as a second language coursework that we offer here specifically at the Academy, but there definitely are many programs out there that can help students to get more proficient with their English. I think that a great portion of that question, though, or a piece of that question is, if you have a lot of these great accomplishments, and one of the things we talk about often in admissions with prospective students and families is to make sure you're highlighting all of those. As Ashley mentioned earlier, we are a smaller institution of only about 1,700 students. So we are a pretty close-knit group here, and that ultimately yields us relatively small applicant pools compared to maybe some other state universities or some of even the larger universities here in the United States. And as a result, it really affords the admissions office the opportunity to get to know these applicants on a pretty personal level. And even if it means through Zoom meetings that we're all so used to nowadays, or actually getting the chance to meet in person, whether that be at a visit here on campus or visiting high schools, et cetera. We really pride ourselves on taking a deeper dive and a holistic approach to the application process. So our counselors are going to be taking a look at certainly things like transcripts, possibly test scores, other elements that may give us some tangible things to look at regarding academic preparedness and future success metrics. But at the same time, we're also going to be looking at some of those other things. So what opportunities have students had to study within a specific curriculum? If somebody is interested in engineering and they had the chance to take specific engineering courses or participate in engineering type of activities, have they taken advantage of those possibilities and opportunities to better strengthen their ability or opportunity to gain appointment here at the Academy? So I think one of the things I often recommend to students is, you know, being modest in life is very important. I think it's always good to be humble, but this is not the time for that. We want to hear about that. So as you plan to start applying here at the Academy or to other institutions, make sure that you're bragging about yourself. Share with us all the wonderful things that you've done, all the accomplishments that you've achieved thus far. Because at least here at the Maritime Academy with the smaller applicant pool, we are going to take a hard look at many of those things and make sure that those get factored into the decision, because you have to be smart to get into the Academy. You have to be smarter to stay, but we are looking not just for the smartest, but the right students that will fit what we do here at Mass Maritime.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. A follow-up to that question was, in addition to IELTS and TOEFL, will you accept the Duolingo test?
Mike, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, as of right now, we're actually in the process of actually looking to accept the Duolingo test. The reasons behind that, obviously, because COVID had kind of restricted a lot of the testing sites and things like that. So as of right now, we are in the process of doing that. So as if someone was to apply, particularly right now, we would still be looking for the IELTS or the TOEFL scores right now. It takes a little bit longer process for us to process those type of things, mainly because we have a governing body here at the Academy for us to propose that and as we move forward.
Okay. And then there's another question. Is there an opportunity for me to convert my diploma in marine engineering to a bachelor's in marine engineering and study up to a master's? I don't know.
Can you repeat that second part again? So
it sounds like it says is there an opportunity for me to convert my diploma in marine engineering to a bachelor's in marine engineering and study up to my master's, I think.
Okay, so I guess they're looking for, is they currently have a degree in marine engineering already.
Well, it says a diploma, and so I'm not sure if that.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure how that person is defining a diploma.
Okay, so let's put it in the perspective here is that when we look at certain accreditations, the institution is accredited by a governing body. So when we look at certain transcripts and we look at those type of courses, typically we'll take very much general education requirements as a whole for a transfer. When they start looking at particular engineering programs, we usually refer that directly to the department itself. If they're coming from another country, we require them to be evaluated to see where the equivalencies are certain things. That would be probably the best way to really approach that, would be a one-on-one. And that's the benefit of being such a small institution, is really to come talk to us and see how we can support the student in a way, because it sounds like there's a little bit more complexity behind that. So we would prefer, and I'm sure the other institutions would too, is to have a conversation about what this will look like or what they're trying to accomplish. Because it is a complex thing, but the idea is that when you come to the Maritime, is that you're really going to strive for that third mate license. And unfortunately, you know, they won't receive the U.S. license, but we want to make sure that they have the competencies that are associated with it. So it is a much bigger, complex situation. So that's why we always like to have that conversation as a whole, so we can find out a lot more information.
Thanks. And that makes good sense, especially when we don't really know exactly what this person has, and to speak with you directly, and that you're open to those appointments. I think that's great guidance for the students. So another person is asking about opportunities to do research related to marine engineering at Mass Academy.
So if they're looking for research opportunities, they do individually. Some of the undergraduate students will do some smaller research. The most recent one that I had learned about, this was actually for marine transportation. They were doing a study of kind of watch standing and how it affects, you know, navigating the ship. That was one way that they were looking at research and how that looked. It all depends on if there's grants available, if the faculty choose to participate in some research opportunities itself. One thing about marine engineering and marine transportation, it is very much a skill set major. So when you progress through the times here at the Academy, you're really focusing on those skill sets as a whole, than versus really conducting research. If someone's really interested in research, it really could be on the side. They could work with an organization, or they could ask the faculty directly if they're participating in any research. But for the most of the time, those licensed track, those marine engineering and marine transportation, are really concentrating on completing their assessment skills, because we have those STCW requirements like firefighting, lifeboat, all of those other requirements that are in addition to the skill sets that are required, like thermodynamics, you know, strength and materials, all of those additional things. So that's really where that focus is than versus any research.
Yeah, if I can jump in here too, Mike, to kind of piggyback off of that, I think one of the things to know is as a state university here in Massachusetts, our primary function and mission is to teach. And so while our faculty and students certainly have eligibility and some are conducting research currently, it's not the main mission of the Academy as maybe it is for our University of Massachusetts campuses that are in fact research institutions. So students definitely, as Mike mentioned, have the opportunity to do that. And what's nice is that in addition to the on-campus research opportunities, the entire statewide system does have an undergraduate research conference every year that students can participate in. And so we've seen a number of our cadets present at that URC every year. And those that are actually selected can go on and actually present at national undergraduate research conferences as well. So for those that are interested in pursuing some kind of research in conjunction with their degree programs, we definitely have those opportunities, and especially outside the license tracks. So the non-marine transportation or the non-marine engineering, there definitely are some unique opportunities to work and live and study and research here in our wonderful climate. For anybody that might be thinking specifically about the environmental side, we have a wonderful opportunity for that, just given the local landscape of where we're located here in the Northeast.
Thank you. Sort of as a follow-up, that made me think about internship opportunities for students, either CPT or OPT, while they're working through their programs or at the completion of their programs for international students. Are there any internship opportunities?
I can go ahead and jump in on that. So as PDSO and DSO, absolutely, yeah. So Mike and I would manage the CPT and OPT process. Kind of a little caveat to CPT and OPT for those special license track majors. So OPT is available to students in the US after completion of their degree. So they apply for that optional practical training. For the non-STEM fields, that's 1 year. For the STEM fields, that's up to 3 years. But for the license track majors, most of the students that have a license track major will end up working on a ship. But because there are some requirements that prohibit non-US citizens from working on US flagships, OPT is a little bit trickier in the US. So we would want to meet with them one-on-one to make sure that their OPT experience is able to be, we're able to meet them with an actual job offer, because most of the marine transportation, marine engineering jobs would require that you have the U.S. Coast Guard license. During your program for CPT, international maritime business, emergency management, all those things could be easily worked out. It just requires that you get an offer from a company for the internship in the US, and then I could walk you through getting your social security number. And again, if you are in the F1, whether you come to Maritime or another school, make sure that you do check in. Anytime you want to work in the US would require that work authorization like CPT or OPT. But there's some great internship opportunities. Like Josh had said, we are very hands-on school, and our career services finds amazing opportunities for students in all the different majors.
Thank you for clarifying those points. We have one more, let's see. Let's see, benefit of pursuing, okay. Oh no, sorry, Ashley answered the question. Okay, I got it, I see.
Yeah, so I did see that one, Paul. I wanted to jump in and just address that. So thank you, Ashley, for sending a message, but go ahead and if you want to just kind of share for the rest of the folks.
Yeah, so the question was essentially, what's the benefit of focusing on maritime logistics in an undergraduate or master's program as opposed to a more general business program? And really the benefit is that, in a maritime specific program, you're still gaining a lot of the general skills that you would in a general business program, but you're doing it through the lens of a specific industry. So the benefit is that you're uniquely qualified to work in this field in the maritime industry, but it doesn't mean that you can't work in another area of business. So you get all this great specific education, but if you need to zoom out at any point and work in another area of business, you're very qualified to do that as well. And to the point on, the way engineering, we have these specific engineering programs, but they relate to more general ones. It's really the same thing. You're uniquely qualified to work in these very specialized areas of engineering, but it doesn't mean that you can't get a job in mechanical engineering or electrical engineering. You know, the base is still there. So you have all of those transferable skills, but you've spent time really focusing and building a skill set to work for a very small list of jobs in addition to that longer list.
Thank you, Ashley. That made me think about students who are maybe undecided or not exactly sure what program they want to start at the beginning of the year. Can they come in as undecided because your programs are very prescribed? And can they change their mind mid-program?
Unfortunately, they cannot come in undecided. You do have to come in under a certain program. With that said, students certainly can change their major. Some switches are easier than others. For example, you know, if you started in marine engineering and then switched to marine science, that's probably going to be an easier switch than if you started in marine science and then switched to marine engineering. So when students are really, you know, torn between two particular programs, we definitely encourage them to reach out to us throughout the application process or before they, you know, commit to one or the other. And we can provide some guidance on, you know, if you're deciding between two, which is the better one to start in to be able to make that change, because some switches, like I said, are easier than others, and we want to help students to navigate that. And so we can provide some recommendations on that, but they do need to start in a specific program, at least for us.
Thank you. Asil, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
Hi, Paula. So there were some questions in the registration report. There were some questions about any funding opportunities or scholarship opportunities. If you'd like to address these questions.
Sure. I think I know during the cost slide, Ashley had touched on briefly that we do offer some merit-based aid for all students. And so it doesn't, while students, international students cannot qualify for federal financial aid, they can qualify for our institutional aid. If a student doesn't qualify on the way through the door as an entering student, there are opportunities to secure grants or scholarships as a returning student to the Academy. So, you know, being accepted or admitted to the Academy without any kind of grant or scholarship doesn't mean that that's going to be the case for all 4 years. One of the other things we encourage students to look into are alternative means of funding. So I know Patrick mentioned during some of his slides that it can be a combination of funds that allow you to meet the criteria to submit that affidavit of support. And there are a lot of organizations, whether it be at the governmental level, private sector level, that are looking to cultivate a workforce. And so with uniquely specialized programs like we offer here at Massachusetts Maritime Academy, there are going to be different organizations and groups out there that want to support that. So there may be several different ways or different sources of funding that can help students offset the out-of-pocket cost for attendance.
Great, thank you so much. There was another question which says, and of course, thank you so much for really this useful and very much, I really enjoyed it and learned a lot. So one of the registrants asked, they would like to learn more about the study prospects of the said disciplines.
Sure. So I think maritime.edu is going to be your first and foremost primary source of that. Obviously, you do have the contact information here for some of the panelists that you've spoken with today or heard from today. But I would definitely encourage you to check out our new website. There's a lot of great information there, valuable information that should help answer some of those questions. And then certainly anything that's left unanswered, you can reach back out to us here at admissions or over to Michael and Patrick in the Office of Intercultural Engagement. We here at admissions, in addition to working with all the other departments on campus, have specific liaisons that work with us from the academic program. So, for example, if a student is coming to us with specific questions on marine engineering that maybe are a little more specific than we have knowledge to answer, we can connect them up with one of those departmental liaisons to actually connect with that faculty member and get some of those questions answered.
Great. Thank you so much. I believe we covered all the questions, and so Paula.
Okay,
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
I want to thank our panelists, Michael, Ashley, Patrick, and Joshua. And also, Patrick, thank you for going over the visa information. I think that's very helpful for students to have a better understanding of that whole process to getting the F1 visa, through, the I-20, and just explaining the complexity of that. And I just want to point out to our audience that next week we will be doing a session about the student visa process for students. So thank you, Patrick.
Absolutely.
Very helpful. And so I think we're ready to wrap up our session today. I would just like to, I'm going to just share my screen briefly. You have very kindly shared all of your contact information, which is greatly appreciated. And now we're just going to take a minute to share our contact information here. Oh, you see that? Is that up there, Asil?
Yeah, just make, can you please just,
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
there we go. So please feel free to reach out to us at the U.S. Embassy in Doha. Here is our Education USA email address. We'd love to hear from you. We're happy to do one-to-one advising or group advising, and just, reach out with your questions. And thank you again for an excellent discussion today about maritime education. I learned a lot.
Yeah, and so just another note, like for those who live in Qatar, they can reach out to our team, but there are teams in almost every country in the MENA region, and those who are joining us from Sri Lanka or other countries, you reach out to the teams, just do Education USA for your center there.
Thank you, Asil. That's an important, yes. All the Education USA centers around the world would love to hear from the students in their countries.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very
so
much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.